We'll work for podcast. We'll work for podcast.
Well, man, what did you do for your career, your profession, yourself this week?
Now there's this whole new, philosophy of you can work from anywhere and, remote working overtaking my job and being a part of the ecosphere. And I was talking to Car and I was asking her, I was like, hey, what if we just moved to Uganda? Like, what if I just talked to my company and is like, hey, I want to move to Uganda and I want to live there. Yeah. So I'd be like, hey, I don't really want to change anything. Just like help me get a work visa and I want to move to Uganda. And, c'est la vie. I can work from anywhere. So why not do that? If I'm on the same time zone as our field office, who cares?
With the Bay going through its transformation, and we'll see how long that lasts, we've seen a lot of companies do something where, depending on the size of the place that you relocate to, you get a percentage of what your paycheck would be. So, for instance, like if you're in the Bay, you're in DC, you're in Seattle, places like that, they'll give you kind of 100%. But if you go rural, and depending on the size, I think it goes down based on, I don't know the exact numbers because I've obviously not in one of those companies, but I've had a few friends that have taken up on it and definitely done that. They're small town and they're trying it out and they're in natural environments that really, work well for them and they're doing remote life. So I definitely think that we're going to see a lot more of that. The person that we're going to talk to next week is living in Haiti right now with her husband and family. So and they moved, I think, right at the beginning of the pandemic. So yeah, it's definitely a thing.
Yeah. So what about you?
I get it's partly for myself. It's partly maybe for this profession that I'm toying with. But I joined a meditation training institute, so that started. It goes from now till basically June, which is a whole other set of things that I got to figure out and make time for. But the premise is basically me trying to make space. So the ask is 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes in the afternoon. There's some classes and other things that I'll be taking throughout the week, but that's what it's supposed to be. I have not accomplished that yet since I started. I think this morning was my most successful. I got about 15 in the morning to start my day, but hopefully it kind of helps me develop a bit of a personal practice that I want.
Okay. So keep on down that hippie road. I get it.
If the world is going to keep being this, then we're going to have to keep developing ways to combat it, right? And create calm and help others create calm and space and healing.
All right. We've come to our sponsor of the week. Just to give a little backstory on this, I've been applying to a lot of places on LinkedIn, and this is a rejection letter that I got almost immediately. I think I got it like a few days later. What is interesting that I've been noticing about applying on LinkedIn is that they do let you know when your application has been viewed, which is interesting, I thought.
That's a new feature. That's cool.
Yeah. So this comes from Year, Y-E-R. It was for a customer service coordinator. It says, thank you for your interest in the customer service coordinator position at Year in the United States. Unfortunately, we will not be moving forward with your application, but we appreciate your time and interest in Year. Regards, Year. And yeah, that's it. A quick shot to the dome. I mean, cordial, gets to the point. I thought it was interesting. It said in the United States. They must have an international arm or branch or something like that. So that's our rejection letter of the week. Please, guys out there, send us your rejection letters, your acceptance letters, whatever it may be at willwork4podcast@gmail.com. That's willwork4podcast@gmail.com. Like and subscribe, hit all those buttons, whatever it is, we need all of that. Thanks, and on with the show.
We'll work for podcast.
We're here today with Trudie Agbozo, who's actually an old friend of ours, and it's kind of great to be able to catch up. So we know Trudie through our time in Peace Corps, and Trudie has quite a resume from all over the places, but she's a health professional and activist, and I really like this, the promoter of radical self-love, and so we're gonna kind of talk to her about all those things. But welcome, Trudie.
Thank you so much for having me, and it's nice to have a bit of a Peace Corps Ethiopia reunion.
Yeah, definitely. Trudie, before we kind of get launched into some of the branding and the new work that you're doing, I'm just kind of curious, with your work with WorkSafe, what is that space and what does that mean to you?
Yeah, so over the last 2 years, I've been working with WorkSafe. So in the West, Europe, Sub-Saharan Africa, and Asia, we often talk about occupational health and safety. And so WorkSafe for New Zealand is the health and safety regulator. And I was brought on board as part of a focus and expansion on work-related health. So the occupational health side of things and focusing on building WorkSafe's capacity in New Zealand, like many places around the world, we actually lose more people in terms of deaths and harm to work related health than actually safety incidents, but often safety gets the limelight. And occupational health was something that I had never done directly, but certainly tied into some other things I've done in health in the past. And it was actually really funny in terms of how I ended up at WorkSafe because one Sunday morning I was cleaning. I heard someone on a news program, The Nation, talk about the health and safety statistics in New Zealand and how many people were dying on average a week. And I just said, I want to do something about that. And the opportunity came up shortly thereafter. But I just had my last day at WorkSafe, so I'm going to transition from one role in government to another.
And what are you going to be working on now?
So I'm leaving WorkSafe, which is a Crown entity, and being an American, it's really tricky to get used to all the different things when you're in a country that still has a queen.
Yeah.
But I'm going to be moving to the Public Service Commission. And the Public Service Commission is basically part of the executive branch of New Zealand government. So we have the Prime Minister and Cabinet, and then we have the ministries and agencies. So the Public Service Commission sits at the top, and the focus is really around ensuring that government functions and that there's a functioning public service. So specifically, I'm going to be a principal advisor for equal pay. So, another area where in my personal life and sort of activist life, I've been really focused on women and other gender issues related to women and girls. And in New Zealand, over the last couple of years, several pieces of legislation have passed to close the gender pay gap, not just across the public sector, but with hopes of influencing the private sector as well. So I will be working directly on the strategy and implementation of that legislation.
That's amazing work that you're doing, and just there's a thousand things that we could ask around that sector, but we're kind of interested in your side hustle that you got going on here about the My Self Care Mart. And how did you create this brand? What does it do? Kind of just take us through that like side hustle.
Yeah, so all of these things that I do in terms of my professional life and my personal life are very much related. And the two organizations that I've been active with in New Zealand, Zonta, which is focused on the empowerment of women and girls, and I haven't done much with Zonta in quite a while, and Rotary. Is the other organization that I belong to, which is Service. And I met you all through Service. So I think that one of my reasons of being is around service. How am I serving others? How am I lifting up individuals and community? And my self care mart came up as sort of a manifestation of lots of ideas in my head. So there's so much work that needs to be done with it to see my ideas come to fruition. But what it came from is, just this observation of the mental strain and suffering that so many people are experiencing. And the pandemic has just heightened that. And before the pandemic, one of the observations that I was making, not only in my personal life with people around me, but I often talk to strangers. So at the bus stop and the train, I've always talked to strangers. And one of the things that I've continued to find really unsettling is how uncomfortable so many adults are in their own skin and how afraid people are of living their authentic life. And there's so many great things about social media, but there's many ways that it's exacerbated these mental health issues. So I thought, okay, I want to write about this. And then I wasn't writing. Anyone can write. It takes discipline to actually produce things, right? So I wasn't really writing. And I wanted to create a space for that. I wanted to create, particularly with the pandemic and people being stuck inside, a digital space that people can connect and start work to build a online community. And so I was just thinking about all these ideas. And mind you, I haven't published on the website anything that I've written so far because I've been trying to manage my own mental health and well-being and not putting too much pressure on myself. And then with my self-care mart, the other thing that been really important for my mental health and what I've been trying to encourage others to do is move. So whether that's 3 minutes of dancing, which can help change your brain chemistry, to a 10-minute HIIT workout, to getting outside and walking, but the positive impact that physical movement of any sort, particularly if you can get outside, can help to improve your mental health. So, with the activity that I, and my own health journey, came an idea out of sheer necessity, which was to also start an activewear brand, TrudieAF, as part of my self care mart. Yeah, I live on an island at the bottom of the world, and it's really challenging to find things that I like to wear, colorful things, happy clothes. And so
Not a lot of happy clothes in Middle Earth.
it's you've seen what Frodo wears. I mean, come on now. A lot of like gray drab. Now there's amazing New Zealand designers and we have great fashion here in many respects. But when it comes to activewear, it's a lot of the same colors and schemes, which are more muted. And I
Mhm.
wanted to do something that's really fun, that's inspired by West African um, patterns and prints and also nature. I love birds, I love flowers. And so I wanted to do something really fun, but also that could create some income to do more activity. So, in terms of um, supporting myself and money, I have very little want, and I feel very blessed and privileged.
Mm,
But what I often struggle with is how much I want to give to different causes,
mm,
or even support. Um, various social enterprises. There's so many more things I want to do in terms of bettering the community, and sometimes you just need more money to do that. So I thought, okay, so I can create everything under this umbrella of my self care mart, do Trudy AF as an activewear lifestyle brand that could also help foster some of the principles of the community around positivity and radical self love and all sorts of good bits and things. And then also generate some income. So, built into the website is a really neat tool. That takes 3% of all of our sales, and they go to the African Wildlife Foundation and also to World Central Kitchen, two organizations that I've been supporting for a couple of years. And so, I'm sorry, World Central Kitchen I've been supporting for several years, but the African Wildlife Foundation is new.
So how has it been going? How's the brand launch been? And like, because I think this kind of connects with a lot of people, and kind of what we're going at is when you're unemployed, sometimes you try to find that side hustle to try to figure out how to give yourself some sort of income. I know that you're not, uh, you don't have to follow those guidelines, but I was just wondering how has it been going since the launch?
So it's been going so so. In terms of um, looking at my books, I haven't broken even yet, and part of the reason why I haven't broken even is I actually decided to hire an incredibly talented recent New Zealand graduate who
Ooh.
is trying to build her own company and work remotely, and so I wanted to. support her business and startup as well. And the other thing is around time management and scheduling. So I've been moving, I've been wrapping up my old job, getting ready to start a new one. And so before then, I was pretty regimented. So I was doing consistently about 20 to 25 hours on my self care mart and TrudieAF. And so certainly more time needs to be invested. The brand is getting out there. One of the things that is really heartwarming is I've had a lot of friends, acquaintances, literally people that I've met once or twice in passing who have bought um, some of the activewear, and they bought it to support me, but
Mm,
not without any expectation. And what people are finding is that they love the products,
yeah.
and that they're really happy. And some people are almost surprised. And I just think it's kind of funny because whatever
Because
I
whatever
do,
you do is going to be like on point. That's why,
Yeah.
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm like, "Did you think I was gonna sell you some sort of riffraff?" Or but, I mean, I've
Snake
been
oil.
yeah, yeah, I've been really grateful for the support, but I just, I have a lovely friend who is a doctor, here in Wellington, New Zealand, and she bought a couple of pairs of the tights, and she said, "It's perfect for work." She wore them to the clinic where she works. So she wore them to do her walk-up practice. And then she sent me a picture on her deck in the evening having wine and beers with her husband. And she was like, and it's great for having wine. So work, waka, and wine.
Perfect. I really like some of the designs too, though. They're definitely beautiful. So I could see that on like a good sunset, you know what I mean? You have the view and the style. Part of the reason that I started by, introducing the other professional work that you're doing is like I'm really interested in this idea of like how to have this like really established career and then also build into this side project that is, like you said, just as much about kind of like who you are and like what you espouse in terms of like community in the world. What recommendations do you have for those that are maybe trying to turn their passions into a reality or turn their passions into a piece of their professional selves as well?
So I am really old school in that I like pencils, pens, and paper. I have a ridiculous amount of stationery, and fortunately for me, I have a friend who has a great business called My Inner Creative. So every now and then I get some more free stationery. So I've always written things down, and I became more and more annoyed with myself because I was simply just writing stuff down and not actualizing it. And I'm constantly giving people advice, whether it's solicited or not. And I just had a bit of an epiphany that I need to start taking some of my own advice. And so, in terms of having a consistency through your work, your day job, and whatever you might be trying to do on the side, I think is really important in terms of what your values are and also what your strengths are. Right. So one of the things I'm really good at is operations, right? So sitting down and figuring out schedules, process flows. So project managing how I run the business the same way I would do when I was working for a Fortune 100 company, and doing that sort of execution, or the same way that I would write in government a stakeholder engagement document, doing that same sort of thing for the business. But instead of stakeholders, right, it's market segmentation, it's audience, and thinking about the content that we're putting out there, and also understanding that things take time. So, in terms of building an online community and a brand, there's so much sensory overload in terms of the internet and what's out there. So, just understanding that it's going to actually take time, and that old school things work really well, like word of mouth. So I had a friend try on a pair of my tights and take a picture, and she posted it on Facebook. And she does African dance classes here in Wellington. And that single post generated 22 new visits to the site and our page, and it created so much activity. The other thing that has happened is we've tried to produce content because you can no longer just sell things or have a community because there's lots of other things out there. And music and dance are such huge parts of not just my West African culture, but just being from Jersey. We have so many incredible musicians, and putting a playlist out there, sharing that with folks. We've had over 500 people on Pinterest have a look at that playlist. And that sort of is a little thing that we want to do. I certainly am trying to put myself on a schedule where I'm publishing a blog every week. There's lots of things that I want to talk about and share with people, and it's just getting my schedule organized so that I can do that.
What would you say then are the biggest challenges when you're running a brand?
I think probably the biggest challenge is not getting lost in the sea of a million, a trillion things that are out there on the internet. And also in the market that we're in, and the nature of the world is really presenting your value proposition. So one of the things that I wanted to do was have fun, colorful things out there, but that would last, right? So, in terms of environmental impact, it was really important to me that we would have products that not only would they last, but when you get tired of it, you could hand it down to a friend or someone else to keep using. The other thing that's really important to me is that people are engaging with my self-care mart and TrudieAF, not just to buy the product, that we can grow and build in a way that people will be able to find content that will improve their well-being is really important. And I think in terms of, again, going back to what's hard for new brands is we live in an influencer culture, and to be able to resonate, it's really hard. So, and I think the well-being content, once we can generate more of that, will help drive some of the other stuff that we want to do.
I think one of the pieces that really connects to even what we're doing, like you're talking about this online community piece, and here with this podcast that we've been working on for I don't know about the same amount of time, a little bit before. I think we started in March technically, but it's the same kind of concept of like, not only do you want to make sure that the content that you make is meaningful to you and then possibly to for us as our listening audience. We just decided to move into like a social media presence, and what you just said really resonates with me because I'm like trying to think about what would be meaningful to use this space for, because that's not what we had originally conceived with this format. It's been a challenge to kind of like think through that a little bit of like, I don't want to just post once a day, even though that's my goal. I want it to also be something that has meaning.
Yeah, it's really tricky because you don't want to fall into the trap of social media where you're just posting to get likes and attention versus quality and value. It's a tricky space because I think that you can very easily be sucked into the psychology of algorithms.
Yeah.
Right. And so just being mindful and self aware of that, I think is really important.
No, absolutely. I mean, basic only my mom listens to this podcast, so we're trying to figure out other people to connect with.
Or at least emails us about it. She definitely lets us know every mistake that we make along the way. Yeah.
Oh, moms are the best.
Yeah.
So you were saying this was kind of a product of the pandemic, you creating all of this stuff, and now that New Zealand's your home, how has the pandemic affected you differently since you're away from your native land or whatever you want to call it?
I mean, I think it's a product of the pandemic in that lots of ideas swirling around in my head. And like many people, had more time to think and for introspection and really saying, okay, I need to do something with these things that have been sort of percolating, for lack of a better word. Now, how the pandemic has affected me, I do think that I've become more anxious at times out of concern for family and friends who are overseas. The last 13 months have been the first time in maybe 15 years that I hadn't traveled internationally. So that was a really weird thing and not having control. And then for 4 months, I worked on the New Zealand government's all of government COVID-19 response. So I left my regular job to the COVID response. So that was a really intense experience. So I'm constantly thinking about, I think, the impact that I'm having and what sort of legacy. And this is a bit morbid, but I often think, what are people going to say about me when I'm gone? And so seeing just the global experience and then having so many of my friends and former colleagues in global public health managing the pandemic on the front lines and feeling a bit helpless made me think more about what am I leaving behind? How am I improving, supporting, helping other people live their best lives? One of the TrudieAF my self-care mart things is a lark life. So I really think it's important that people live lives grounded in love, authenticity, resilience, and community. So those are sort of like the four pillars of everything that I try to do and live and what the brand is trying to do. And so in terms of the pandemic, I've thought a lot about those things. How are we building more resilient communities? How are we showing and fostering love and being our authentic self?
Do you see this as the space that you're growing into, or is this a space that will always kind of operate independent of your kind of your time?
Somebody else asked me that recently, and I just don't know. I think it's part of my personality to always be interested and do lots of different things. When I was in the fifth grade, I started playing the clarinet. Well, then by the next weekend, I wanted to try the alto saxophone and the tenor sax and the bari sax. So I just wanted to play all the instruments, but I do have a pretty voracious appetite in terms of learning and doing things. So, I mean, a lot of the things I'm interested in are connected in one way, shape, or form, but I can see myself sort of continuing on with a day job and then doing my self-care Martin and TrudieAF. I don't really like saying on the side because I'm always thinking about it and I always have a massive to-do list. So I don't really feel like it's that on the side because it's very much present of mind. But as the business grows and the community grows and becomes more successful, I also hope to hire more people and create some opportunities for others and possibly grow and mentor others. Because I often think, okay, well, I've gotten a great education, but how am I utilizing that education in terms of mentorship and leadership? So that would be a great next step as well to be able to bring some more people on board.
Well, it really speaks to your ability to kind of do that forecasting and like that strategic design, but then have others that can flex into some of these other spaces. That's a beautiful thought. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, there's also things I don't like doing. So on my to-do list this week, I need to do the US and New Zealand taxes. I know how, and I've done my own taxes for years. I just don't want to do it. I would love to just pay someone to do all the business taxes.
I think that's a great way to end this, that nobody likes doing their taxes. But before you go, we love to give our guests a space to say whatever the hell they feel like. If you want to shout out some brands or whatever, floor is yours, Trudy.
Well, I'm so grateful for you all giving the opportunity to be part of your pod and speak. And I listened to some of the other ones. I think they're great. So now you'll have one more listener, not just your moms and your partners. I will be a regular listener because it's really valuable stuff that people have said along the way, your different interviewees. And I'm really proud of where TrudieAF and my self-care mart are going. And I think that there's certainly more work that can be done on the website and building the brand. But part of what makes me so proud is the tremendous amount of support that I have. So in terms of shout out, I just want to shout out the people that have cared for me personally, but also cared for community and trying to lift others up. And I think this idea of radical self-love, we want to normalize it so that people are really, we joke about it and it's often a hashtag like best life ever, living my best life, but that should just be a thing, right? It shouldn't just be a punchline.
She's obviously so advanced in her career. She handled the pandemic response for New Zealand, which we didn't even get into, but like she's done all this stuff. She's done great. And it's almost as if she's been through that space. She's been able to like really understand what her passion is, and then use those skills. Like she already reflected, using those skills to implement something along this razor, like the launch of her brand, or getting into those space and being able to effectively do it because she's able to effectively assess her skills.
Well, and I guess that's why I asked her about what she's doing right now, right? And a lot of that has to do with what you're talking about. It's like building at scale and really that strategic planning. And when you think about businesses and small businesses, or even movement building, right? Like I've kind of experienced this a little bit through organizing work, where you have to be able to like sit down and make that plan and then like understand what the next steps are, because that's what eventually leads to actually having a product and like launching and like being able to connect with your consumers, your audience, whatever. And so I think that's what I found as like an interesting aspect to this project, like not only just the mission, the vision, and kind of like the purpose, but also the realization that like there's this way to really flex into your core skill sets that you might already be using, and but just do it in this other way. Like how cool is that,
All right, ladies and gentlemen, here goes.
but
Name that job. Name that job. Name that job. Name that job.
Not job.
Oh man.
Kelly has an exciting opportunity for a blank to join a well-known food company in Emeryville, California. This is contract to hire opportunity. Day shift duties: maintaining organizing of lab areas, perform and become proficient in establishing testing and operation procedures, conduct and evaluate self-life studies at prescribed intervals and report results, coordinate routine lab and equipment maintenance, packages and mail samples to vendors and plants for testing, perform product attribute testing for various chemical compositions, coordinate verification, support installation, and then assist in development. Other duties as needed is like collecting documents, maintaining records, and understanding ingredient data and formulas. Requirement: bachelor's degree, graduate degree preferred, experience with R&D, experience with Sigma 6, CIP, MAP, PD formulation, and it says ready to drink product development experience. Apply today. Dinner in that job.
So you a lab tech?
You're working in a lab and you're working with food.
Okay, so you're quality control.
No, you are a food scientist.
Okay. I knew it was something. I didn't know what the naming convention was, but yeah. Okay. All right. You're not developing food.
You're making the flavors. I mean, I don't know what Kelly products are. I don't know Kelly.
I don't know what Kelly products are.
We'd have to look at what they do, but you're like, I think you're doing research and design for food science. So you're trying to make flavors in a lab.
Yeah. All right. Well, there you go. All right. Well, I got one now. It is so this job comes from Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Salary $25.35 full time. And they're looking for one person. Qualifications: bachelor's required, crisis intervention 2 years required, criminal background check, and confidential. So the benefits are, all of this is up front, which I thought was interesting. Medical, dental, vision, life, disability, retirement, all those things. Minimum 40 hours, 24/7 on-call response required. You're going to work 8 days, at least 5 hours. All right. So the general summary is that this organization is working with Air Force Family Advocacy Program and provide 24/7 non-clinical crisis intervention services and ongoing support to USAF personnel, their family members, or intimate partners who are victims of a certain type of crime whenever requested. These services include, or not limited to, development of safety risk assessments, explanation of victims' rights, creating safety plans, court, medical, legal accompaniment, and providing information resources. In addition, DAVAs are required to promote and coordinate community response to this crime and support FAP by providing system accuracy. Like I said, the education, it should be social work, counseling, or behavioral science, or psychology, or marriage and family experience. 2 years of experience assisting and providing advocacy service to these victims. DAVA have all knowledge of military programs, organization, chain of command, all that kind of stuff. Brendan Bolin named that job.
You're a National Guard.
No.
I got really confused at the end there.
So you work with domestic abuse victims.
Jesus, man, this is the second one that you've done.
I just thought it was really interesting. It's a domestic abuse victim advocate that you're working within the military. I thought that was really interesting. Sorry.
No, just it's like within 3 weeks we've had 2 domestic violence counselors. Yeah, I mean, like, that's cool. So basically, like, you're there representing. I guess you're representing a family member of an enlisted personnel.
You're definitely a part of a hotline. So whenever there is, I'm assuming, because it could be a family member of like military personnel that that got abused, or maybe the military personnel themselves. So you're definitely looking into, working with JAG, I'm assuming, if any cases come up, and then looking into what happened and then providing any services. That's our jobs. And thanks everybody for tuning in. Remember, you can like and subscribe. Email us a job if you want at willworkforpodcast@gmail.com. Email us a rejection or acceptance letter. Once again, that's willwork4podcast@gmail.com. We're on all the platforms, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, whatever. You can also find me at regrets_never. And Brendan?
Go Bez _now.
And thanks for tuning in, and, kiss your mother.